Coach, after reviewing the film against Charleston Southern, what stood out to you as the biggest issues?
Well, it's been the same issue, since we started practice in July. Our defense and our defensive rebounding are just not at the level we need to play at. According to Ken Palm, who evaluates your efficiency both offensively and defensively, we're 277th in defense. And we're right there as same with our defense rebounding. So we keep working on that and hoping that we're going to get better. We're going to try some subtle changes. And, what's interesting to me is we also compared this team to the Elite Eight team that I coached just, what is that, 3 seasons ago. And at this time, then, our defense and rebounding was terrible. And then we figured out a way to defend better. And then all of a sudden, we started winning more games and getting more stops. And it wasn't from getting any better rebounding. It was putting more pressure on the opponent and forcing more turnovers. So we went from like 277 to like 107th, which is not great, but we were scoring the ball at a very high level, so it worked. Right now, our offense efficiency is 24th in the country. So from an offensive standpoint, we don't always look good, and I'm disappointed that we're not playing better on offense. But I also see we have a lot of potential offensively if we can get a few more stops and get a chance to get out on the fast break. But when you're constantly, giving up offensive rebounds like we did to Charleston Southern, where they got 22 points off of their missed shots and our defensive backboards, and that's a real issue. Players have to make defensive rebounding a priority.
Next question from Matt Shodell. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for taking the time. Wanted to get an update on Nigel and when he might be fully healthy. And then also, you mentioned the defensive issues. Is part of this also just having so many new guys and just maybe they're not really understanding how to play together as well as they will eventually at this early point in the season?
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely true. First of all, when you have 10 new guys and they all play defense at different schools, we have, basically four freshmen who are just learning everything for the first time. And then we have like 7 seniors who all came from different programs and played defense differently and are trying to learn our system. It's not that ours is complicated, but you do have to communicate very well. And right now, that's a real weakness. Like we had a play the other day where we were planning to switch. We called it at the timeout and said, okay, we have 2 like sizes, and we're going to switch the ball screen, the initial ball screen, so that we don't put 2 on the ball. And we didn't switch correctly, and the guy who screened rolled to the basket, caught it, and just made a layup. So that's just a lack of communication. The players have to do a better job there. And we've got to be more demanding in practice to be sure they're doing it right. The funny thing is, in practice, we've been doing a lot of these things correctly, and then the game comes and our mental preparation, our mental toughness is not as good as it needs to be.
Oh, and any update on Nigel's status?
Yeah, last week we practiced on Wednesday. Nigel practiced the whole time. We practiced on Friday. He practiced the whole time. And then on Saturday, the injury bothered him. So we'll find out today, probably around 4:00, 4:30. We start practice at 3:30. He'll warm up and start to go. And if it bothers him, he'll sit out. And if he's good to go, he'll prepare for the game tomorrow.
Next question from Michelle Kaufman. Go ahead, Michelle.
All right. Hey, Jim, I want to know, what are you expecting from Arkansas? I know that they they just lost to Illinois, but they have a big, like a 7-2 Croatian center. Another guy who scored 26 points the other day. What are you expecting from that team? And John Calipari, I'm assuming you know him pretty well.
Yeah, I know Coach Cal very well. I have known him for a very long time. They've got a bunch of NBA guys. The first is the 7-footer, what we call Big Z. He's an NBA stretch 5-man. He's a very, very good 3-point shooter. He's shooting, I forget what it is off the top of my head, but like 65% from three. So you got to guard him, even though he's a 7-footer, you got to guard him at the 3-point line. Thiero, if you remember last year, he played at Kentucky at the team that spanked us in the second half, and he was terrific. He's their 4-man who's a phenomenal athlete. So we got to keep him and the 7-footer off the glass. They're both great at catching lobs, so they'll screen and roll and catch lobs. But the guy that makes them go is Boogie Flan, the point guard, who is lightning quick. He's a freshman who has the ball in his hands a ton. He plays almost the whole game. And he's an expert at using ball screens. So a lot of those players who are going to play in the NBA live off of his creativity. So it's very hard to slow Boogie down because he catches an outlet. He's so fast, he can be a one-man fast break. Thiero is the same way. The outlet rebounds and outlets. He's just a Karl Malone type guy who runs the court and dunks the ball. And then they got DJ Wagner, who's a great 6'4" athlete, and John L. Davis, who everyone should know, who led FAU to the Final Four 2 years ago. So, and then they've got a very deep bench with a lot of tall guys coming in off the bench. So we got our hands full. They're a very typical John Calipari team with a bunch of NBA guys and a bunch of size.
So how do you think you guys measure up to that? And do you think maybe the challenge of playing a team like that, maybe your guys will rise to the occasion? Or
well, I don't really look at it that way. Every game is a separate entity. Right. So when you play one team that sits in a zone, it's a different style. Another team that plays pressure man to man and switches everything, that's a different style. When you play a John Calipari team, you're talking about a team that devotes a lot of its energy to defense, because if they get stops, they just score in transition because they're so fast and athletic. So our job is going to be, don't turn the ball over, try to get good shots and score. Because if we don't score, before we ever get back to guard them, they'll be trying to outrun us.
Thank you.
Next question from Chris Stock. Go ahead, Chris.
Coach, it's a little bit about what you've been saying about Calipari's team and how to defend them, but in particular, their ball screens, their middle ball screens, does it look very similar, just a kind of a typical Calipari team, and maybe the challenges those ball screens present with Boogie and DJ and their guys?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to an NBA team. If you see Jamal Murray with Nikola Jokic, they run that same play constantly. The Clippers with James Harden and Zubac, all these NBA teams with great point guards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the big kid from Gonzaga, what's his name? Chet Holmgren. So all these NBA teams run that middle pick and roll. And I think, Cal coached in the NBA. He's very familiar with NBA type offense and offensive players. So he's created an NBA, prep school.
One more question. Go ahead, Chris.
Just wanted to ask about Matthew Cleveland. I didn't see him against VCU in the second half and the 16 minutes off the bench. Kind of what's going on with him with his minutes, and is he okay, or what's kind of your thought process?
Yeah, he's fine. I just, would like him to play better. We need him to defend and rebound and make shots. And the other day, when he played in the second half, I thought the best he played was in a 5-minute segment, and he guarded the point guard. So we've got to look at that as a potential, change in our strategy. because his defense off the ball has not been nearly as good. And, there's really three parts to well, at least 3 or 4 parts to defense: on the ball defense, off the ball defense, defensive rebounding, and there's also like team defense, just knowing where to be to help. It's off the ball, but it's even more than off the ball. We've had players who are not great on the ball defenders, but are just terrific team defenders. Last year, we had Keyshawn George, who was a liability defensively when he was on the ball, but an absolutely terrific team defender. He helped everybody, and our defense was better when he was on the court. And we need more guys like that who are really good at helping each other.